Spring is packed patios, parties, wedding weekends, and RK Zero Proof keeps you in the mix without the morning after regret. As the original Zero Proof Spirits brand, RK's warm molecule gives you that real deal burn of whiskey or tequila with none of the alcohol. 0 calories, 0 sugar, and a whole lot of freedom to enjoy the moment. Sip smarter this season at rkzeroproof.com. That's rkzeroproof.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to dive into some players who are off the slow starts this year, but that we think could bounce back. And this is, of course, focusing on the minor leagues. And later on this week, we're going to have an interview with Jaden Loray, the Orioles' 5th-round pick in the 2025 draft. That will be dropping later this week. It was a fun conversation. So be sure to check that out when it is released on your podcast feed here in a few days. But on the topic of tonight's episode, we're going to go through the Orioles farm system and highlight some guys that have gotten off disappointing starts. And it's been, for these players, a slow go over the first few weeks of the minor league season. But as we get closer to the 1-month mark, we're still optimistic that these guys are going to bounce back. And the timing of this episode is pretty good for us because Nick actually had a piece over on our Substack this morning, oriolesontheverge.substack.com, that highlighted a handful of players that are not going to be featured in tonight's episode, as well as some that are. But Nick, can you give our listeners a little sample of what's over there?
Yeah, 3 guys I looked at just because, doing the over on Patreon, we have our weekly episode that comes out on Mondays, recapping the previous weeks, all the action, everything you need to know. So join our Patreon, get access to those episodes. But yeah, in putting all my notes together and everything, I saw Boston Bateman in particular, lefty down there in Frederick, and if you just pull up his player card and look at the numbers, it's not good. His stat line in the box score this week wasn't good. I think he gave up 7 runs and 9 hits. It was a crazy line. But I'm looking all right, I watched Bateman's 3rd outing this year, and it went. I said after that, I remarked that was the best I'd seen him pitch since he joined the organization. But then you look at his numbers, and it's it doesn't look like it's going very well. You dig a little deeper, and you see some crazy outlier numbers with Boston Bateman early on this year through his first 4 starts. Extreme numbers, 9.82 ERA, but the FIP is 3.27. Striking out more guys than ever, getting more swing and miss than ever. There's just a lot more in that article, a lot more positives than just the baseline ERA for Boston Bateman through his first couple of outings. And so I went through kind of some other guys that I thought, hey, these are that have some outlier numbers, good, bad outlier numbers, we'll say, that point to maybe some potential positive regression as the next few weeks go along, and hopefully the weather starts to warm up. I don't know what's going to be like up there for you guys, but I think this week's going to be another cold, frigid week. But hopefully the weather warms up and we see some of these younger players especially start to heat up a little bit. But yeah, still early, and a lot of guys on our top prospect list that they're all not going to pan out, obviously, but there are some guys who maybe some people are getting a little bit worried, but I think there are a few in particular that I don't think we're anywhere close to worry time yet with some of these guys.
I think it's a good place now to start, and I want to go over to Bob. It's just Bob. For his player, this is a guy that's not highlighted in Nick's piece, and as Bob said before we got on the air, really his start might not be that bad. It just has not met the very high expectations that have been there for him since the end of last season.
Yeah, that would be the hot name coming out of the end of the 2025 season and in the Arizona Fall League, Luis De Leon. Yeah, he hasn't been terrible. He has a, 5.63 ERA. The walks are up. And he's an extreme ground ball pitcher, so you're going to have some batted ball luck not go your way, especially when you're a ground ball pitcher. It's like a 350 BABIP. It's a little high. His FIP is 3.34, and the bad luck continues into just his last start, which was on the 23rd, and I hope he's okay and can make his next start. He got hit with a comebacker at the start of the 4th inning. I think it hit off the back of his non-throwing arm, so should be okay, but even in that game, he was pitching the best he had all season. 3 innings, no runs on 2 hits, 2 walks, and that umpire was terrible. I'm going to say that was one of the smallest strike zones I've ever seen. So honestly, could have had 1 or even 0 walks with a decent 4 strikeouts. Looked like the guy that we expected him to look like coming into the season. But as with all pitchers, I feel like at this point in the season, 3 starts, 4 starts, you're only talking less than 20 innings on the year. It's so easy to, I just noticed there's a lot of guys with high ERAs. Even Twine Palmer, after a solid week, he's got a 4.40 ERA, but his FIP is in the 2s. It's just bad luck can really show itself in these short sample sizes. And in the beginning of the season, that's when a lot of people are paying the most attention. But I would not worry about Luis De Leon. He just turned 23 2 weeks ago. He still is getting a almost 65% ground ball rate, hasn't given up a home run, striking out a little bit less than usual, 24.3% of batters, walking 13.5. Those numbers will hopefully improve, and the BABIP gods will go back a little bit in the other direction, and then we'll be clamoring for him to be promoted to AAA before long. But yeah, would like to see him get on a nice little run here coming up.
I just think with Luis De Leon, there's a lot of excitement, like you said, surrounding him coming into the year, and deservedly so. After that 2025 season he had, all the attention he garnered out there in the Arizona Fall League, because that's an opportunity where a lot of people in the prospect community, they all get to head out west, and they get an opportunity to see a guy like De Leon live for the first time. And he pitched well. Lefties with that velo, they obviously are going to get a lot of attention. But you see in these 2 weeks here in the minor league season, and yeah, I started pushing for it for guys like Ike Irish publicly, so I'm guilty of it as well. But you see they're already clamoring for guys that are performing well. Push them up. Let's get them up through the system. And Luis De Leon, I feel like coming into the year, maybe a popular sentiment was, as soon as he starts the year off hot, it's going to be push him up, get him up to AAA. And a lot of that, is his pending Rule 5 status and everything else. But he's just 22 years old. He actually just turned 23, I think, like 2 weeks ago. So just turned 23 years old. He entered this year with just 16 AA innings under his belt across 3 starts. And this is someone who's battled a lot. And it wasn't that long ago where he was questioning whether or not he could continue, because he had lost all confidence and even felt like he was like losing purpose out there in the mound. So he's still young. There's still pretty decent ways to go with his development. And the ceiling is incredibly high, but it's okay that these first couple of outings haven't gone particularly well, I think. And I think he's going to be pretty fine. You routed off a lot of the numbers there. He's still battling the control. That's always been kind of a noted weakness in his game. But, the walk rates tick down each year the last couple of years. His FIP is right in line with his career average. His career average FIP the last 3 years is 3.2. It's 3.3 this year. The ground ball rate is up even more than usual. Called strike plus whiff percentage is way up from 2024, which is way up from 2023, and so on and so on. I just think he's just got to start hitting the spots. And when he starts doing that more, I think he's going to be fine. And the mentions in every video and highlight of Luis De Leon, once he does, the mentions will be full of calls to promote him to AAA or put him in Baltimore's bullpen, and life will be normal again. But yeah, I was pretty pleased. Like you said, that last outing I felt like was going pretty well, and it was just unfortunate that last week was just the week that all of our pitchers seemed to get hit by comebackers, unfortunately.
De Leon is fine as far as I'm concerned. It has been a little rough early on with the command, but I've seen De Leon get in some spots in his career where it's like, all right, the walks are going to keep piling up, and then he finds a way to correct it. And I think the other thing that's important to keep in mind is that because we're so early in the season, he's probably not getting the opportunity to pitch his way through some situations that later in the year are going to be available to him. So, maybe he's laboring through 4, but later in the season, he could go back out for the 5th, retire the side in order. Next thing you know, he's going out for the 6th, and the final line looks a lot better. This time of the year, the pitchers aren't really given that opportunity to do that, and I think that's kind of been the case with De Leon. The other thing I'll say, too, is just that one of his starts, and the start that, it's not the biggest blemish on his line, but one of his worst starts so far was at New Hampshire a couple weeks ago. That whole series for the Bay Sox was a nightmare. So he was not the only one that struggled there.
It's the weather. I know it's not an excuse. Everyone's playing with it, but especially these guys who grew up in these super warm climates, I can't imagine And they're, spring training's in Florida. It's warm. Come up here. I'm sure it's hard to get a feel for the ball. Your command's not going to be at the level it might be in June or July and so on. But, yeah, I think that was a good point, though, that, they're not going to let them work out of many long innings. They're going to be really tight on the leash, especially early in the season. So, yeah, everybody relax. Like, the farm system didn't fall apart just because a few guys got off to a bad start. But that's what we're here to talk about. So
I'm going to go over to Nick's guy now because this is a hitter that I will admit I kind of just took it for granted that he was going to get off to a good start because I don't know that I've ever really seen him slump in his career, but the first few weeks for him at Delmarva have been a little rough.
I mean, those early numbers, my guy's Jordan Sanchez here, and I did talk about him in that article this morning over on Substack, but I just wanted to make sure we talk about him. I'm not bag defending either. He was my preseason bold prediction was Jordan Sanchez as the minor league hitter of the year. And so look, that was a bold prediction, a fun article, but not bag defending with this pick. But I legitimately do. I was watching his games. I watched Delmarva intently this week. Delmarva had a great week. I think they were like 4-2. The pitching was really good this week, particularly. But a lot of these young hitters, I think, are starting to maybe turn a corner down at Delmarva, especially Sanchez. And my thing was, I'm watching, I think it was Tuesday's game. He had a couple of really good at-bats. And I'm looking at the numbers. They're talking about him on the broadcast, and it's just like what I'm seeing, the kind of at-bats he's taking, they're not lining up with his numbers. When you dive in a little bit more, you kind of see it. He entered the weekend with a sub-200 average, but he also had a 190 batting average on balls in play. And, like, these discussions aren't just like, oh, low BABIP, guy's unlucky, he's going to turn things around. Look at our Samuel Basayo discussion last week, and then look at his numbers since we had that discussion. Nailed that one. In the case with Sanchez, I think my eye test matched that 190 BABIP. Some pretty crappy luck, but there's a lot else under the hood with Sanchez as well. We know he hits the ball incredibly hard. On Sunday, he went 4 for 4 with a home run, a double. I think he walked. I don't know if he walked or not, but yeah, I know he went 4 for 4 with a double. Had a great day, probably the best game of his career outside of that 2 home run game at the end of last year. But he's still just 20 years old. He's going to play all year as a 20-year-old. So he's not super young for the level, but also not old for the level at all down there in Delmarva. He's also running a near 30% strikeout rate. I think it dropped down like 28% after this weekend. Last year was at 29.5%, but he walked 14.5% of the time. This year he's not walking. It's just a 4% walk rate so far, so not good. He's likely never going to be someone that I think hits for high average. And like when I think the ultimate ceiling play for Jordan Sanchez is corner outfielder who hits 240, a lot of strikeouts, 20+ home runs a year from the left side, strong walk numbers. Like peak Jordan Sanchez, a strong side platoon, not running him out there against lefties. I actually don't think he has a hit off lefties all year this year. So like that's peak Jordan Sanchez. So why not just lean into that? And so my thought was I wouldn't be surprised if early on here they're just trying to lean into that pull side power. Let's get comfortable with that. And as a result, through the first 3 weeks here, we're looking at he's pulling the ball at a sky-high clip. It's like 58, 59 something percent. But the swing and miss is very high. The ground ball rate is very high. It's almost like the timing is just off. And so he's completely missing at a high rate. But when he's making contact, it's largely been on the ground so far this season. But when he's run into 2 home runs so far this year, and they've been moonshots. And also, power hitting lefties really struggle down there in Delmarva. So I think a lot of it is just, I know Rates and Barrels had a discussion about Jordan Walker, I think, last week or earlier this week or something, and they talked about that, how, a lot of the old heads, they have that issue, these guys going to drive line where it's just pull side power, let's lean into it. It worked for Jordan Walker. He's having a great year up there in St. Louis for now. We'll see. It's 5 years in a row, I feel like. But I feel like you're seeing that, if you look at some of the numbers, you're potentially seeing that with a lot of the younger hitters right now. That's their profile. You're just going to have to live with the strikeouts, live with the lower batting average, but they're really trying to harness that pull side power. And right now, it's just not syncing up completely. So I kind of hope that's what we're seeing with Jordan Sanchez a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of Samuel Basayo when it came to the Orioles early on. And thank you, by the way, Basayo, for unleashing the beast and making us look pretty smart last week. That was awesome to see. But Sanchez, yeah, he looks like he's really close. Like he's It looks like he has the highest infield fly ball rate of his career at 17.6, by far the highest ground ball percentage, 51.1%. 34% was his previous highest. So clearly, just something is just missing because, like you said, he's still crushing the ball really hard when he hits it. Just gotta get it in the air a little bit more, pull it in the air, and it's great. Pull it on the ground, and you're probably grounding out to second or first base. He's also learning a new position at first base a little bit. He's played 6 games there, mixing his time in there with the outfield and DH. And again, he is first time in cold weather, because when he made his debut in low A last year, it was summertime. So, yeah, first time playing in cold weather. He's probably learning how to grocery shop on his own. Just like I know he's like 6 months older than most guys, but he's still doing a lot of things for the first time. So, got to cut him some slack when it comes to that. I mean, it's only 70 plate appearances. Same for the next guy we're going to talk about, where it's like, yeah, again, just like with Luis De Leon, small sample. It's only been less than a month even, and there's still like 4 or 5 months to go. These guys are going to go on scorchers. It all evens out in the end, but slow starts are way more noticeable, especially in the beginning of the year.
Those are all good points, and I do think that the pool-side power with Sanchez is such a huge part of his profile because, as Nick said, this is not someone who, I think if you try to project him out long-term, you expect to hit for a high average. Strikeouts are always going to be part of his game. And I think that also, too, we just have to recognize that there is a learning curve here because he only got a week at low A at the end of last year because he got injured towards the end of the FCL season. If not for that injury, he probably would have had about a month at Delmarva, maybe a little more, a little less, but somewhere right around a month. And some of these things may have already played out at the end of last year. So there is a learning curve that I think we have to acknowledge is taking place here. I do agree that I think if you look at his performance on Sunday, it's a good sign that he's hopefully about to turn a corner because I have the sense that when he does, it's just going to be full momentum. You're not really going to be able to slow him down at the plate. And the idea of him ending the year in Frederick or possibly higher in a few weeks could be definitely back on the table. I don't think it's off the table at all right now, but I think we'll be able to see it as a much more realistic possibility.
Yeah, and you go back to like early scouting reports as well. I mean, he's had high praise for his swing decisions. He's had high praise for the quality of contact. When he does make contact, the power is very real. It's there. So, yeah, I think for him, it's a lot about just settling in. And this is a guy who, he's a top 20 prospect, I think, on like every national list. So, yeah, definitely going to keep paying attention down to Delmarva. Like, there's just a lot of bats. Steven Martinez. I don't think we're going to talk about any of these other guys tonight, but guys like Steven Martinez and
Lorenzo.
Joshua Lorenzo, yes. These guys, Lorenzo just looks massive, by the way.
Yeah.
But a lot of these younger international prospects, bats down there, they're starting to turn the corner a little bit, and they look legitimately, if you watch these guys, watch a game, watch 2 games, like they look nothing like they did last year. They look much more composed, and it's a much better product down there in Delmarva this year than I think at this point in the year than we've seen in years past.
Absolutely. Also, I feel like the ceiling I see for Jordan Sanchez at this point is almost like Anthony Santander if you didn't switch it and he could only bat left-handed.
I think that's fair.
Spring is packed patios, parties, wedding weekends, and RK Zero Proof keeps you in the mix without the morning after regret. As the original Zero Proof spirits brand, RK's warm molecule gives you that real deal burn of whiskey or tequila with none of the alcohol. 0 calories, 0 sugar, and a whole lot of freedom to enjoy the moment. Sip smarter this season at rkzeroproof.com. That's rkzeroproof.com.
I'll go over to my guy now, and that's Aaron Estrada, who is off to a really bad start down at Chesapeake. 176 batting average, he has a 490 OPS and a 23 WRC plus through 18 games. Those numbers speak for themselves. And I'm not going to dwell on him here, but I know that with Estrada, much like with Luis De Leon, it just felt like the expectations for him going into this season were so high. And when we got to look at Estrada at Major League Spring Training in a few games with the Orioles, we were seeing the impressive exit velocities. We were seeing him take really good at bats. So the feeling, I think between the year that he had last year, being able to finish the season on a high note with 27 really good games at Chesapeake, and then have the spring training that he had, led to a sense of, okay, this is going to be Aaron Estrada's year. And so far, through the first 18 games of the season, it has not been. He has really struggled. But a couple of things I point out with Estrada are, first of all, we have seen this before. He got off to a really bad start at Delmarva 2 years ago before he caught fire in May and never slowed down. Another thing to point out, too, is that he's generally been a guy in the past where the power does not come around until about the 2-month mark. I think in each of the last 2 seasons, he's not hit his first home run until close to Memorial Day. He already has his first home run under his belt this year. But another point that I would make with Estrada is that if you dig into the data right now, there are some signs of adjustments at the plate. So far, he's pulling the ball a lot more than he has at any stop prior to his career. And although his swing percentage is in line with his career numbers at other levels, it's much higher than it was during his limited sample at AA last year. He swung at less than 50% of pitches with the Bay Sox towards the end of last season. That number is now up to around 54% over the course of the first few weeks. So there's a bit of a change in approach going on. The only other thing I will say with Estrada, though, is that the strikeout percentage being as high as it is right now at 23% with the walks down around 7% is a bit alarming. That's the one thing where I look is like, okay, something's a little bit off here. But if you look at the whole picture, I do kind of think that this may be a process over results type of thing that we're seeing with Estrada. And we've seen this with other hitters in the past where, okay, you want them to work on certain things, and maybe the numbers are going to take a lump. I can think of some examples over the years, especially guys when they got to Aberdeen, whether it was Colton Cowser, Gunnar Henderson, Kobe Mayo. You could tell they were working on certain things, and that was driving the stats down initially, but eventually they would start to hit, and the numbers would even out. And I do think that that's going to happen with Estrada, even if the picture itself right now looks pretty bleak.
I feel like I know exactly what's happening with Aaron Estrada, and it's why I'm not too worried. I think we saw this, I can't remember if it was last year or 2024 with Kobe Mayo, where process, he's doing everything right, hitting the ball hard, nothing to show for it. And then you start pressing, and then you start swinging, being a little too aggressive and trying to make up for it, and you can't do that, but you got to learn the hard way. Before this past week, his strikeout rate was 17.3%, which is pretty much right in line with his career. A little bit on the higher side, but, nothing to sneeze at. And then if you go last week, he looks like he struck out in, 9 times. He struck out 9 times in 25 at-bats, something like that. So clearly, I think this is a guy, look, we've talked about how much praise he's gotten over the offseason, whether it's from Kobe Perez, managers, Mike Elias, whoever, outlets, us, maybe. A lot of smoke being blown, and rightfully so, in my opinion, but comes out, looks really good when he gets his chances at big league spring training, hits the ball hard, performs pretty well. Also, it does seem like he has vastly improved the defense at second base. He looks much more confident, comfortable out there. Defensively, to me, it just screams he's trying too hard. He got off to a slow start after all this hype. He wanted to get off to a fast start as much as we wanted him to, and now he's pressing, and I think this day off today is going to help him hopefully reset and just try to get back to the process, and hopefully the results will come, and I think they will.
Yeah. When he's been on this year, and not just this year, his entire career, but especially this year, because we know how much bigger he's gotten. We know the exit velo numbers. We've been able to see a lot of that batted ball data, and we know what that potential ceiling is with Estrada. When that swing is on, though, man, it is probably one of the most beautiful swings in the entire organization. And I know he's much bigger now than what his player profile says, but he's still a smaller player, and that bat speed and that power, when he can rip a ball into right field, it is impressive. It is exhilarating to watch. But yeah, no denying it is a slow start. I just had 2 notes on Estrada. One, like you mentioned, the defense. I love that. It's all second base. I don't think he's played anywhere else in the field this year. Some starts at DH, give him a little bit of a rest. But only playing at second base, I love that. Thank you. Do the whole get your outfield work, prepare to be emergency catcher, play first base left-handed thing when you get to AAA, you're ready for the call-up, whatever the Orioles do to delay. Save that. Can you just master one position? And they're letting him do that right now, which is great to see. And then with the other thing that came to my mind too for maybe this bit of a slow start, I like that thought of he's pressing right now, and that could be it. The pressure's been ramped up. He knows he's that close to getting up to AAA this year. He knows it's going to be a big year. He had a good year last year. Those couple of weeks he was in AA. He's ready to hit the ground running. He also had that good spring training. He's ready to hit the ground running. But one of my thoughts was also, I don't know how much he did in the offseason. And I wonder, like, how much does that impact a young guy like Estrada? Because the Orioles prevented him from playing in Venezuela this year. They let one guy go play in Venezuela who they ended up cutting before the season started. So I think they were like, yeah, you can go ahead and go. At that time, it was not the best time for anybody to be going down there. And I know a lot of MLB teams were kind of worried about any potential issues with their Venezuelan players, even bringing them back to the Dominican or down to Florida for protection. So, like, I don't know. Like, even guys like a long list of Orioles prospects were drafted into the Dominican Winter League. And I know as fans here in the States, it's kind of viewed as that's just winter ball. But, like, that's a badge of honor and pride for these guys. And that's a big deal. And to play in Leadham. And you don't typically see a lot of these younger guys play. But I think they're in there. They're in camp. I don't know if there's like a little minor league system, like a B team situation down there or not. But they're at least down there. They're working out. They're in camp. They're watching MLB veterans, current MLB stars, current Venezuelan stars shine down there. And Estrada, I don't know what he did this offseason since he wasn't allowed to play down there in Venezuela. So I don't know if that maybe had an impact. Like guys like Steven Martinez, he was drafted by a Leadham team and was at least on a roster somewhere. So Estrada wasn't. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and it means nothing. But that was one of my first thoughts watching him struggle early on this year is maybe it's just going to take him a little bit longer because he didn't get a chance to kind of play any type of professional ball over the winter. But yeah, he's a young Venezuelan kid. And it is cold up there in Maryland right now, so give it a couple more weeks.
Speaking of guys getting signed by Winter League teams, how about Anderson De Los Santos? That was pretty cool for him late this week, getting picked up. But I don't know the team or the league, but it was cool to see. We're not the only ones that were like, oh, shoot, this guy's good. Yeah. But, yeah, no, that's it. That's a good point. And I'm honestly going to be watching tomorrow night's game with Chesapeake, and I almost just want Estrada to miss-hit a ball that falls in for a hit and just be like, okay, I can breathe. Or just hit the ball really well and it falls in and doesn't get, robbed or whatever. I hope he gets off to a really good start Tuesday and the pressure can kind of be taken off from that point.
That's all it took for Basayo the other night. Couple softly hit, flick it the other way balls, and look what he's done the last couple of days. We won't talk about the rest of the team, but look what Basayo's done the last couple of days. Very impressive.
I would gladly take that or some more walks. I remember when Jordan Westberg was in the minors, he would have those long stretches where he would be hitting really well and then he'd get into a slump for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. We would always say, just wait for him to start walking. He might have an 0 for 3 game next week, but if he draws a walk and then the next time he comes out he draws 2 walks, that's a sign that something's about to change and he's going to turn things around. So if Estrada could have that kind of week, I would be happy.
That's a good point, yeah. Or at least I know some guys walk more when they're struggling because they're just trying to get on base and then the walks disappear, but they start hitting the ball. One or the other would be nice.
Absolutely. And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink when you're heading out to the yard this season. And if you don't have tickets to the game or you're looking for somewhere to watch a road game, Checker Spot is also a great place to check out for that, as they are open 7 days a week with plenty of good food and drink and a lot of TVs. So, great place for Orioles fans, pre- or post-game, or just to hang out and watch the game. That's Checker Spot Brewing at 1421 Ridgely Street in South Baltimore. And for our last call segment tonight, we will do our normal shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game or a good week or maybe just something notable in their stat line. And a quick plug here, we are about to update our top 50 for the month of May for our patrons. So if you have not signed up yet, please consider doing so at the $3, $5, or $10 levels to have access to the new top 50 as well as bonus content on a weekly basis from Bob, Nick, and myself. And for this one, I'm going to start off with Nick because his pitcher was named South Atlantic League Pitcher of the Week in Frederick, so certainly a good choice here.
Yeah, Yber Cartaya fell off our top 50 coming into the season, I believe, but still in the conversation. That was one of my tougher choices at the end of my list there. But I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. He dropped for me because just the walk rate wasn't improving, and it's been a couple of years now, but maybe it's clicking now. He's piggybacking with Carson Dorsey down there in Frederick, and Dorsey's been starting. Cartaya's been coming in afterwards. 2 appearances last week for him, 8 1/3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 5 walks, 14 strikeouts. But he only had 1 walk and I believe 7 strikeouts on Sunday. So he's now at 16 innings on the year, a 1.08 ERA, 35% strikeout rate, and a 123 average against. He's still walking 13% of hitters, but 4 of those walks did come in 1 outing. His other 3 outings have been 1 walk, 2 walks, and 2 walks. It's, I don't know, the stuff, the fastball in particular, like that thing moves. That thing is lively, and you can see that even on the Frederick feed, which, little grainy, little draft leaguey still. But I'm just glad baseball's back in Frederick. But it was hopping, and I don't know, he just looks much more composed on the mound, and a lot of his misses, even in the first night when he had 4 walks, it was in the 40s. And he had a lot of competitive misses in that first outing. So I don't know. It takes some of these younger, I said this a lot of times, it takes these younger, taller international pitchers. Sometimes it just takes a couple more years to figure it out with the control. And maybe Cartaya is starting to turn a little bit of a corner there. I hope so. I'll keep watching. We'll see how that trends over the next couple of weeks. But my hitter real quick, prospect-wise, I think you guys got some good ones that I didn't really see anyone else that, we've talked about him a lot, a couple of these guys so much already, so I wanted to go somewhere different. And I just want to shout out, not a prospect anymore, but Christian Encarnacion Strand. I know you guys touched on that trade a little bit in one of the shows I was out recently. He's hitting .351 with 2 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, and 5 walks in 9 games. So it's a .1031 OPS since the Orioles acquired him via trade with the Reds, who had DFA'd him. When he was in AAA with Louisville, the Reds AAA affiliate, he was hitting .222 this season with 12 strikeouts and just 2 walks. So I don't know if it's, this is a former top prospect with the Reds. And you go back to 2023, he hit .270 with 13 home runs and a 113 WRC plus in 63 Major League games. I know the next year I was drafting a lot of CES in fantasy baseball, and that was a terrible decision because it's been injuries and struggles since then. But, if assuming he's clearly fully healthy now, maybe change of scenery, a new home. It's doing him some good here in Norfolk so far. And, he's not necessarily a guy you want to see in the big leagues because that means some bad things have happened on the Major League roster. But if the Orioles do need him for any reason, he's played first base and third base. If the Orioles do need that bat, he keeps hitting like this. I think CES could be a pretty viable replacement here. Love seeing him play as well as he has so far because this was a guy, I don't remember how high he got in a top 100 prospect list, but I feel like it was fairly high. I remember him being a prospect.
Top 50, yeah.
Yeah, I remember him being a prospect of the guy that I was really excited to see blossom with Cincinnati, and it just didn't work out for him there.
Yeah, I love that pick. He does look like a major leaguer when he's up there, at least so far in his Norfolk tenure. I could easily see this being like the next closest thing that the Orioles get to finding Ryan O'Hearn. It's even better, though, because CES is younger, has more team control. If they could fix him, maybe it'll make up for these extra couple years of Ryan Mountcastle still being in the organization. But I like that pick. And Cartaya, I like that as well. I think ultimately he could end up being a pretty nasty reliever for the Orioles or another team, but I do like what he's been showing us so far this year. And as for my picks, I cheated and I picked 2 hitters. Maybe that's why you couldn't find one. Sorry about that. I just wanted to, along the lines, the same similar themes of Anderson De Los Santos and what did we learn from him. Let's not forget about some guys that, used to be on our top 50 and dropped off. I'm just, keeping one eye on these guys. Frederick Bencosme and Leandro Arias both are going to be my picks here. Bencosme, obviously, we loved him. 2022 breakout. 2023, he was in high A-ball, Aberdeen, held his own, got to Double-A at 21 in 2024, and then has just kind of languished there. 87 WRC plus in 24, 64 in 25, and this year it's only 62 plate appearances, so, grain of salt and all, but it's batting 269 with the 831 OPS, which is a 107 WRC plus. He's walking 11.3% of the time, which is up there with the best of his career. Striking out more, 22.6% of the time, but his ISO is actually 212. BABIP's not lucky. It's a pretty normal 306. He's already got 3 home runs on the season. It does seem like he's filled out a bit. He's playing left field, and maybe he's trading off some of that contact ability that he's shown for some more impact on the ball. And if he is, it's working so far. Hopefully he can keep it up. And he's still only 23. So he'll be 23 all year long. Maybe all hope is not lost for Bencosme. Keep an eye on that. And then with Leandro Arias, he's only 21 years old. That seems crazy to me. But after a disappointing year last year in 299 plate appearances, he had an 84 WRC plus for A plus Aberdeen. Injury riddled, didn't really have any pop whatsoever. Well, this year, again, it's 54 plate appearances. Who knows? But he's walking 16.7% of the time. I already said that. Striking out 18.5% of the time. Still no pop. Still the same thing there. But he's batting 300 with a 803 OPS and a 134 WRC plus. And he plays really smooth defense on the infield. So hopefully, if he's healthy all year, he can build on this and become the player that a lot of people thought he might have been able to a year or two ago. Oh, and my pitcher. I forgot I had one of those. Adrian Heredia, a 21-year-old international signing who came onto the scene really strong in 24 DSL. He had a 1.83 ERA, struck out 31.8% of batters. Really good numbers there. Moves up last year to FCL, pitches well again. 2.53 ERA over 32 innings, striking out 27.1% of batters and only walking 8.3%. He got a little bit of taste at A-ball last year and struggled pretty mightily in 14 and a third innings with the 8.79 ERA. This year he's got a 3.46 ERA in his first 13 innings out of the bullpen. Not striking out as many guys, but he doesn't walk a ton of guys either. And just a nice young arm, 6'1" righty, who I think the team sees a lot of potential in.
Those are good choices. I'll start with my hitter, and that's R.J. Austin, the Orioles' third-round pick out of Vanderbilt last year. He had a great series as Frederick faced Wilmington last week. He hit safely in all 3 games that he played in, including a 4-for-4 performance with a home run on April 22nd. He hit a home run again the next night as part of a 2-for-5 performance. And I'll admit with Austin that since the Orioles drafted him, he's been one of those guys that I've had a hard time really figuring out what to make of him as a prospect, because he has very obvious strengths. Good defensive versatility, runs well, but the hit tool in college just didn't really sell me on Austin as a prospect. So he's been one of those guys that, as I put together my top 50s since the draft, he's always on the periphery of the list, but I just can't find myself ready to pull the trigger on him as a top 50 prospect, because I'm like, all right, there's generally speaking a lot of players like this who have success at the lower levels in the minor leagues. They look interesting. Their versatility helps kind of add another dimension to their game, but then they just kind of hit a wall in high A or double A because they don't hit. Austin, hopefully, is not going to be that kind of guy. At least what we're seeing so far, good numbers to start off the year at Frederick. If the bat can play this year, I think that he's really going to rise up some lists. And then my pitcher this week, it was great to see Caden Hunter make his professional debut last week at Delmarva. Even if the results weren't pretty, 3 walks in 2 2/3 innings, he gave up just 1 run on 1 hit, an unearned run, struck out 2, and this is a guy that's got a really interesting background. He put up back-to-back really good seasons at Sierra College, before transferring to USC last year. And it's one of those picks that we've seen the Orioles make in previous drafts where they go college arm from major program whose ERA is not great, but there's good strikeout numbers. The stuff kind of has an interesting profile to it. And the Orioles did that last year by taking Hunter in the 6th round despite a 5.5 ERA over 70 in the third innings at USC. In that time period, struck out 79 guys. I think that because he started the year on the IL, it might be a little bit of a slow push in his first full season, so I don't expect big numbers from him right away, but this is a guy that I think people should have on their radars, and I think as we get further into the year, maybe we see a Carson Dorsey type of situation where last year, Dorsey started the year on the IL. He was out for longer than Hunter, but out for a little while. Command doesn't come back right away, but when it does, he really takes off, and I could see Hunter being that guy this year.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what Hunter's got to give. I've been really impressed with RJ Austin, to be honest with you. It seemed like early on he was doing all the little things right. It seemed like he had great at-bats, but he had nothing to show for it. And I guess the opposite of Aaron Estrada pressing, he just kind of just kept doing what he was doing, playing good defense, good base running, and then really caught fire this past week and hitting the ball with real authority. I was very, very impressed. So stay tuned to our Top 50 update to see how impressed we were.
I think you nailed it. When it comes down to RJ Austin, it's the hit tool. Like, the guy won a Gold Glove Award at Vanderbilt. The athleticism is off the charts, and I think when you talk about just like being a good human being, I think there are just reports out the wazoo going back to his days at Vanderbilt about how just an amazing human being he is. But as far as like a baseball player, it's the hit tool for me that has kept him down. But everything else has been there. It was a little comforting to see the Orioles pick him where they did last year, but I feel like it's kind of like that. I don't know, maybe like not that they're the same profiles at all, but that whole, Tavian Josenberger, John Rhodes, like that kind of realm
Zach
of the
Watson.
draft. Zach Watson, like where it's like if you're following along with the minor leagues, either you like him or you don't, I feel like, first of all. But it's if they hit, it's going to hit really hard. So hopefully, yeah, curious as to why he only played in 3 games last week. I hope he's not hurt or anything. But, yeah, it's a good week. Hopefully a good jumping-off point for him.
Absolutely. And with that does it for this episode. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, we do have an interview later on this week with Orioles prospect Jaden Loray. That was a fun conversation.
Exclusive interview, if we may.
Exclusive interview, that's right. An exclusive interview with Orioles prospect Jaden Loray. It was a fun conversation, and we look forward to releasing that later this week. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon.com and sign up now to become a member of our Patreon community. Get access to our May Top 50 update, which will be released to patrons on Thursday, along with bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, access to patron-only channels in our Discord community, and a whole lot more, so be sure to check that out at Patreon.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens and Zach Spedden, you've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Spring is packed patios, parties, wedding weekends, and RK Zero Proof keeps you in the mix without the morning after regret. As the original Zero Proof Spirits brand, RK's Warm Molecule gives you that real deal burn of whiskey or tequila with none of the alcohol. 0 calories, 0 sugar, and a whole lot of freedom to enjoy the moment. Sip smarter this season at rkzeroproof.com.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.